A hangar in Wichita, Kansas. 1970. A four-seat airplane on a concrete floor. A mechanic in work clothes, logbook in his back pocket, keys in his hand. He owns it. He bought it for less than a used truck. He paid for it on a mechanic's wage, no financing, no partner, no inheritance. Last weekend, he flew his wife and two kids to a grass strip in Oklahoma and came back Sunday afternoon. That was general aviation at its peak. Accessible, practical, in the hands of people who understood the machines and kept them flying. In 2026, that same airplane, same four seats, same aluminum frame, same air-cooled engine, certified to the same standard it was certified to in 1956, sells new for $400,000. The mechanic's son cannot afford a discovery flight at $250 an hour. Something happened between 1970 and now. Three things to be exact. Three institutions made three decisions, each one defensible on its own terms, each one a catastrophe when they landed on the same fleet and the same buyers across 4 decades. This is what they did. Have you ever known the price of something had nothing to do with the thing you were buying? Tell us below and subscribe to Sky Ranch. This is where we run the numbers. The late 1960s and the 1970s were the golden years of American general aviation. Companies were building new designs faster than the market could absorb them. New certified single-engine designs came out of Wichita on a pace that made aviation feel alive and expanding. Flight schools ran two-seaters at prices a working wage could reach. A teacher in Nebraska could build hours on weekends without a second income. A farmer in Kansas could get his private certificate for what a vacation cost. A plumber in Ohio could own a four-seater. A private pilot certificate cost between $2,500 and $4,000, depending on how efficiently you trained. Entry-level trainers were priced like used cars, not luxury goods. In 1978, American factories delivered 17,811 general aviation aircraft in a single year. The Cessna plant in Wichita ran 3 shifts. Piper Aircraft employed 8,000 workers across 3 facilities and shipped more than 5,000 airplanes. Beechcraft was building trainers, twins, and high-performance singles fast enough that dealers had waiting lists. The 3 most important trainer aircraft of that era were the Cessna 152, the Piper Tomahawk, and the Beech Skipper. Between them, they put a generation of working pilots in the air. 357,000 Americans held active private pilot certificates in 1980. That is the peak. The number has never come back. By 2024, the FAA counted 174,155 active private pilot certificates. That is a 51% drop across 44 years. The planes were not unsafe. The pilots were not flying differently than they had in 1970. The sky was identical. The price did something else entirely. The first institution built its bill quietly over decades in a regulatory framework most people have never heard of. The FAA certifies general aviation aircraft under a body of rules called Part 23. Part 23 governs any airplane under 19,000 pounds with 19 or fewer seats. When those rules were assembled, the FAA placed a 4-seat training Cessna in the same compliance category as a pressurized corporate turboprop doing 300 knots. One rule set for machines that share almost nothing except the fact that they both fly. Think of it this way: a small-town hardware store and a national logistics warehouse both sell products. They are not the same business. Part 23 required the hardware store to pass the same inspection as the warehouse. When computer avionics entered cockpits in the early 1990s, the FAA required every line of software code in every certified panel to pass a validation standard called D0178. D0178 was written for jets. The FAA applied it equally to a 2-seat trainer going into a flight school in Kansas. Certifying a single avionics product to the full Part 23 fleet costs up to $20 million. Certifying the same product under the lighter ASTM consensus standards used for light sport aircraft costs approximately $2 million. The difference is $18 million in compliance paperwork that does not make the instrument work better. It makes it certified, The buyer pays for it in the price of every knob, every screen, and every antenna in the panel they sit behind. The type certificate for a brand new clean sheet, certified general aviation airplane costs approximately $25 million. A type certificate is the government's permission slip to build and sell a particular aircraft design. The equivalent certification under ASTM standards costs approximately $250,000. That ratio is 100 to 1, not 100 times safer, 100 times more expensive to certify. The market below the certified wall ran its own controlled test on what that overhead actually costs. In 2004, the FAA created the light sport aircraft category and moved certification to ASTM consensus standards. 126 new LSA designs reached the market in 7 years. Van's aircraft, experimental and not Part 23 certified, has put more than 10,000 flying aircraft into the sky worldwide. 1.5 new Van's RV aircraft complete their first flight every single day. The demand for affordable aircraft never disappeared. The certified wall redirected it. That is the first bill. $25 million in type certificate costs and up to $20 million per avionics product, spread across a shrinking production run, charged to whoever buys the airplane at the end of the line with no itemized statement and no line on the invoice that says what they are actually paying for. But the first bill alone does not explain what happened to the entire industry in 1986. That required something worse. By the late 1970s, plaintiff attorneys across the United States had found a reliable target in aircraft manufacturers. A small airplane crashed. Regardless of cause, the lawyers named everyone in the supply chain: the airframe maker, the engine maker, the avionics vendor, the parts distributor. You did not need to have caused the accident to be named as a defendant. You needed to have made something that was on the airplane. Manufacturers called it automatic inclusion. One manufacturer, Unison Industries, made piston engine ignition systems for certified aircraft. They were named as a defendant in the crash of a Cessna 206 off the coast of Hawaii. They spent between $10,000 and $15,000 mounting a legal defense. Then they discovered that their product was not on that aircraft at all. This was not a rare injustice. This was Tuesday. In 1962, liability insurance cost manufacturers approximately $51 per airplane delivered. By 1985, that figure had reached $70,000 per airplane. That is a 1,370 times increase over 23 years. Industry-wide, general aviation manufacturers paid approximately $24 million in liability premiums in 1979. By 1990, that figure had reached $240 million. Senator K. Bailey Hutchison of Texas put the Cessna chairman's own words into the congressional record. Liability had become the single highest expense in building an airplane, between $40,000 and $50,000 on an aircraft that sold for $85,000. Between 1983 and 1986, Beechcraft defended 203 product liability lawsuits at an average defense cost of $530,000 per case. The NTSB investigated every underlying accident, 0 manufacturing defects, 0 design defects. Across all 203 cases, Beechcraft spent approximately $107 million defending accidents it did not cause. Think about what $107 million in 1980s money means to a company that builds propeller-driven airplanes. That is not insurance against failure. That is a tax on existence, collected whether the product worked or not. On May 28, 1986, Cessna chairman Russell W. Meyer Jr. issued a public statement. He had been building general aviation aircraft since the company's founding in 1927. He was done. Cessna halted all single-engine piston production that year. Piper Aircraft filed for bankruptcy in 1991. The Cessna 152, the Piper Tomahawk, the Beech Skipper, the 3 trainers that had put a generation of working pilots into the sky were all gone from production by the mid-1980s. None of them came back. From 1978 to 1994, general aviation unit aircraft production fell 95%. 17,811 airplanes in 1978, 928 airplanes in 1994. Senator Nancy Kassebaum of Kansas shepherded the General Aviation Revitalization Act through Congress. Meyer had promised Cessna would restart production if it passed. President Clinton signed it on August 17, 1994. The act set an 18-year limit on how far back manufacturers could be sued. Cessna restarted. Within 5 years, the industry produced more than 25,000 new manufacturing jobs. But GARA fixed one thing: the liability clock. It fixed nothing else. The certification overhead stayed. The parts pricing structure stayed. The competitive market that 16 years of bankruptcies had hollowed out did not rebuild. The companies that would have rebuilt it had gone bankrupt. The ones that survived faced the same $25 million entry cost they always had, plus a decade of lost momentum and a used fleet that buyers chose over new aircraft because new aircraft cost 2 to 3 times what inflation justified. Which brings us to a question that Cessna itself tried to answer and could not. In 2007, Cessna CEO Jack Pelton stood before a crowd at EAA AirVenture in Oshkosh and announced a clean sheet, 2-seat light sport trainer. The announced price was $109,500. The crowd placed 720 orders by Friday afternoon. Cessna claimed more than 1,000 orders within a year. To hold the price, Cessna built the airplane in China through Shenyang Aircraft Corporation. They started from scratch, with price as the binding constraint. First deliveries arrived in 2010, 3 years late, after 2 prototype crashes during spin testing forced mandatory design changes. By November 2011, the price had climbed to $149,000. The market walked. Cessna built approximately 275 Skycatchers before CEO Scott Ernest announced at the National Business Aviation Association conference in late 2013 that the aircraft had no future. Production ended. The world's largest producer of general aviation aircraft, using Chinese manufacturing costs, a clean sheet design, and price as the primary constraint, could not build a $100,000 trainer. The certified wall was not theoretical. It was confessed by the company that built it. Which part of that failure surprises you more, that Cessna could not escape its own cost structure, or that the aviation press never ran the math on what that means for every buyer who came after? The third institution never needed a crisis. It needed only the absence of competition. With no affordable certified alternative in the market, original equipment manufacturers set parts prices without constraint. The Lycoming 0360 engine family that powered the 1979 Cessna 172 and the i0360 that powers the 2024 model are the same family. Air-cooled, 4 cylinders, horizontally opposed. The engineering is unchanged. A factory overhaul today runs approximately $58,000 plus core. A factory new i0360 runs approximately $105,000. In 1982, a comparable engine overhaul kit for a 4-cylinder Cessna cost under $50,000 all in. By 2025, the equivalent parts kit had climbed to $123,000. The engine price nearly tripled. The design stayed the same. 4 decades of parts price increases compounding at approximately 5% annually, unchecked, arrive in every annual inspection bill. None of that overhead built a better engine. You are paying the math of an uncontested market, not the value of a superior part. PMA parts. Manufacturer approval carry the identical FAA safety certification as OEM parts. When PMA competition entered the certified market in the 1990s, one manufacturer running a parts monopoly immediately dropped a $3,600 brake component to $800. The markup was not structural. It was the assumption that the buyer did not know an alternative existed. Smart mechanics have used PMA parts for 30 years. Every pilot who learns that a $3,600 brake is also available at $800 with the same FAA approval has recovered a portion of the overhead. The system charged them. Here is what was lost. In 1970, a farmer with $5,000 and a desire to fly could do it. Flight schools ran two-seaters at prices a working wage could reach without a payment plan. A mechanic in Wichita could own a 4-seat Cessna and fly his family to a grass strip 2 states over on a long weekend. A teacher could build flight hours on weekends without a second income. None of that required wealth. It required a market that priced the airplane against what working people could spend, not against what a certification architecture demanded they pay. General aviation, at its peak, was not a hobby for the financially comfortable. It was practical transportation maintained by ordinary people who understood the machines and could reach them economically. That version of the sky closed gradually between 1979 and now. The 3 trainers went first. The affordable certified airframe followed. The pilot pipeline that depended on rental rates, those airframes once set, contracted behind it. 357,000 active private pilot certificates in 1980. 174,155 in 2024. The people who built these systems did not set out to close the sky to anyone. The FAA wrote Part 23 to make airplanes safe. Congress created a liability framework that produced a crisis no one modeled. The OEMs priced their parts against the market available to them. Each decision was individually defensible. The aggregate cost of all 3 landing on the same fleet, billed to the same buyers across the same decades, that is the bill. And right now, the FAA's Mosaic rule brings a new aircraft certification pathway into effect on July 24, 2026. New designs can come to market under Part 22, a performance-based standard with dramatically lower certification costs than the old Part 23 wall. Whether that produces affordable certified aircraft in 3 years or 10, or whether the overhead has only shifted rather than disappeared, is a question this channel will cover as the answer becomes clear. The mechanic's verdict stands regardless. A used 1978 Cessna 172 with a fresh engine overhaul sells today for approximately $85,000. That buyer is not compromising. That buyer read the arithmetic, understood what the $400,000 sticker cost and what it actually buys, and made the rational call. 3 institutions priced you out of the sky. One of them is starting to answer for it. Is Mosaic the real fix, or just a different version of the same wall with a lower door frame? One answer. Leave it in the comments. If Sky Ranch is where you come to see the numbers, the industry leaves uncalculated, subscribe.